This format is shaping up to be full of surprises. Hey guys, Otaka here, back with another meta tier list, and today we're going to be going over just where the meta is currently at pre-YCS Brazil, which I believe is next week as of recording this video, and I do apologize that I'm speaking a little quieter, a little softer in this video, because it is like 12 o'clock at night, my fiance is asleep, and I'm not looking to wake her up. But yeah, the current format, as I said in the cold open, is really showing a lot of just changes progressively with each YCS. We've already had 3 YCSs in the time span of this format existing, and I think we have like 4 more before we get into the next format. So we have like a lot of time for this format to really shape up and just decide where it's going. In my last tier list video for the Doom of Dimensions format, I was pretty much just predicting where the format would be, and my prediction was that Yummy would be the best deck in the room, and I was kinda right. I was half right, essentially, because I said that Yummy and Mitsurugi were going to be the best decks in the format. I just didn't say that Yummy Mitsurugi, the deck, was going to be the best deck in the format. So again, today we're just going to kind of be talking about some of the more relevant decks in the current format, where things are kind of shaping up, and we will, of course, still be talking about some road deck options as well, decks that are obviously still topping events, whether it's a regional or the YCSs, just things that are worth talking about. And we'll even be talking about a deck that kind of came out of the woodworks, a deck that got support in the Doom of Dimensions set that I didn't even talk about in the last tier list video, so something that just really kind of caught me off guard. But before we do jump on into the meta tier list, I have noticed that a great deal of you that are watching this video right now are not currently subscribed to the channel. So if you like competitive based content, whether it's advanced format or even Genesis format, consider subscribing to the channel for more. But also leave a like on this video, and of course comment down below your thoughts on today's video. And it is by no means required, but it is greatly appreciated. But if you would like to further support the channel, then consider joining my community Discord, following me over on Twitch, and using my TCG affiliate link. Or if you would like to save 15% off the next time you buy a new deck box, your playmats, or even your card sleeves, then consider using my Dueling Guard affiliate link. All links will be in the description down below. All right, so the tier list has only changed in one regard. We have removed the unknown tab because every deck that we will be talking about today, I have some mild inkling at least of how they are performing, what they are doing, and just there's no unknown in this scenario. But we do, of course, have obviously the top contending meta decks in the format. We have decks that are rogue decks that are kind of creeping their way into the top placing, and we also just have some decks that are worth mentioning, of course, because they are either doing something prevalent here or they're maybe doing something in Genesis that I just kind of want to talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about the parfait elephant in the room, and that is Yummy. As you see here, we have 3 different variants of Yummy to be talking about today. We are obviously ranking Yummy Mitsurugi in the best deck of the format. I think that this is by and far and none the best deck of the format. We saw so many Yummy Mitsurugis at YCS Anaheim that were in the top 8 alone. I think out of the top 8, 5 of them were Yummy Mitsurugi. And yes, not all of them are building the deck the same. You know, you have Triff with his 60 card pile. We have the other people who are playing like Futso. People are playing this deck differently, but overall, everyone is in agreement. This deck is incredibly powerful, and it's just really hard to stop. Not to mention, this deck is just really good at going first and second. Yummy as a deck alone has a hard time getting hit with hand traps because you just have to have the right combination of hand traps, but the Mitsurugi cards add a second layer to the deck that just kind of makes it almost impossible to hand trap the deck. The only thing that's really stopping this deck is like Droll and Lockbird if they poorly sequence their cards. And then you have Triff's version where it's even more in-depth with the Nouvelle cards and Diviner the Herald, which just gives the deck even more cards to basically force out interaction from your opponent, and if you don't get hit with interaction, then you just kind of win the game. Then we're going to talk about Pure Yummy. I think Pure Yummy is also just really good in the current format, just simply because it has so much room for non-engine. Unfortunately, as we saw at YCS Anaheim, we are kind of in a format that demands for hand traps, because if you are deciding to play board breakers, you do have that opportunity to be getting hit with these FTK style decks like Ryziel Automat or even the Crystron Canine with the Mjolnir lock. And so if you're not playing hand traps, you're not going to be able to stop these decks from getting to that. A big thing that I want to mention is like Triff even mentioned that if he was playing hand traps, that he would not been hit by the Ryziel Automat deck nearly as effectively. But also on top of that, hand traps are way more effective against Crystron Canine when it comes to trying to Mjolnir lock you. If you just have an imperm for the Kukuri, or even like just plenty of other hand traps to stop them from summoning out the Mjolnir, you are completely fine. So again, I do think that is why Pure Yummy is also just a very valid top contender of the format, because yes, one of its worst matchups is Mitsurugi itself, because Murakumo just kind of nukes the board and you have no way to really do anything about that. But Pure Yummy, again, just has so much room for hand traps. It has like 21 to 24 slots available just for non-engine alone. And then the Yummy cards can just OTK your opponent. Like, Yummy is just Yummy. It's really hard to interact with, but they have so many forms of interaction just for you alone. And then the last Yummy version I want to talk about is Yummy Sulfur Cord. This is a deck that I've only recently come across. I saw some people talking about it online, and I've recently started toying with it myself. I played it at locals. I got third at locals with it. I went X1 out of 4 rounds. It's really good. It is really consistent. These Sulfur Cord cards really took me by surprise. First off, Sulfur Cord Happiness is just a custom card on its own. I do plan on making a deck list video and an actual guide to Yummy Sulfur Cord here next week, so keep an eye out for that. But this is a really, really cool and strong deck. The Sulfur Cord cards basically just make it, they're just more ways to get to happiness, or sorry, to get to Cups of Yummy way, because the Sulfur Cord cards, minus one of them, are level 1 monsters, and you are also able to just pendulum summon, and it's able to just really pump out bodies. On top of that, the Link 3, which you usually end up making on your opponent's turn with IP Masquerena, is an Omni Negate. So you get Yummy plus an Omni Negate without having like a Murakumo or like a Solemn Judgment on the board. So you end up having Yummy with 2 Omni Negates, because obviously we have Herald of the Arclight, but then we have the Grand Sulfur Cord Link 3, which is, again, another Omni Negate, which is just really strong. Another layer of depth to the deck, and the Sulfur Cord engine, I think, is like 8 cards, so you still have room for like 15 non-engine, so you're still looking pretty good. Pure Mitsurugi, phenomenal deck still in the current format. This deck is just really strong. Murakumo is a powerhouse of itself. The deck has so much recursion and so much grind game. Just being able to search out your best pieces. Habakiri is just the most broken card in the deck, and one of the most broken cards in the game, in my personal opinion. Then being able to just go first or go second, because Murakumo is really good going first, and it's fantastic going second, cracking boards. The deck is just incredibly consistent, with all of the monsters being able to search ways to get to the Habakiri, which is, again, just the best card in the deck. But even as just an engine, the Mitsurugi cards as an engine is phenomenal and super splashable in almost every deck. Like, there's very few decks that can just not play this. Like, even by banning the King of the Pharaoh Imps from the Ryziel deck, like, this is still just a playable engine in almost all decks. Draco Tail, branded Draco Tail. We do have pure Draco Tail and pure branded here as well, but branded Draco Tail, I think, is actually a noteworthy deck. A big thing I wasn't doing was respecting Draco Tail pure, and I still don't respect Draco Tail pure. I think it is a very linear deck, and we'll get into that in a moment, but branded Draco Tail is actually pretty good. So a big thing with like Draco Tail is, like, you would always say the Ash Blossom or the Ghost Spell for the trap cards, and then the trap cards were like their main form of interaction. So if you could stop those from resolving, you could kind of crack the board, no problem. But branded Draco Tail makes that a little bit more difficult, because if they're ending on stuff like a Mirror Jade or other branded-esque fusion monsters, or being able to make the Guardian Chimera, then this deck makes it a lot more difficult to crack their board. Not to mention, if they're going second and you control a monster, then they have 2 cards in their deck that are branded fusion. They have, well, branded fusion, and then they have Key to Draco Tail, which is able to just fuse monsters from the deck to make more Draco Tail shit. So this is just a really, really strong deck, and honestly something that should be on your radar. But as for pure Draco Tail, I'm putting this in like good pilot rogue. I think pure Draco Tail is not that great of a deck in the current format. Like Yummy Mitsurugi and just pure Mitsurugi, like, they are just plowing through this deck and not caring whatsoever. So it's making it really hard for this deck to keep up. The branded cards, I think, are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this deck. So if you're not playing the branded cards, which, I mean, I don't know why not. They just got reprinted in a structure deck here like next week, so they're all really affordable. But again, I think the branded cards will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting and helping Draco Tail keep up. So pure Draco Tail has to take a really good pilot, because like just summoning Winda isn't really enough, or summoning out like Dragoon is just not enough. Not to mention, Pure Draco Tail, it's night and day whether or not you see the 5 mana or not. If you don't see the 5 mana, then you're probably just losing if you're going second. If you do see the 5 mana, then you can maybe put up a fight, but you're still struggling. But the big thing going for the Draco Tail deck is the fact that its best matchup is Yummy. That being said, though, its best matchup is pure Yummy. Yummy Mitsurugi, you stop one end and the other end pops up. Malice, I'm putting it in good pilot rogue, more leaning towards like the good pilot rather than the rogue. I think Malice is still good. I talked a lot of big game for it in the last tier list video, and I do think it is still a very viable option. It is still very much topping events. There was, I think, 1 in top 8 at YCS Anaheim, I believe, but it is still a very good deck, simply because Lancia is kind of out of the format. You do not really see anybody playing Artifact Lancia right now. The problem is that this deck is playing a lot more draw spells and add cards in the deck, and Draw Lockbird is running rampant in the format thanks to Mitsurugi being literally everywhere. So because that Malice does have to play into a card that it didn't normally lose to, and as a result, it kind of will lose to it. Droll plus another hand trap pretty much just says game over for Malice, but this is still, like I said, a very consistent and powerful deck. It's just their Silver Bullet is no longer in the format, so it's able to kind of creep its way into top contending placings. But again, it will take a good pilot, not just any Joe Schmo can, top with Malice at this point. Ryzeal Automat also, I think, is like a good pilot rogue scenario. We saw it at top 8 YCS Anaheim, and it simply, I think, was like a meta call, but also a really good player piloting the deck. The big thing with like Triff winning YCS Lima with his 60 card pile Yummy Mitsurugi deck was that a lot of pro players caught on to the fact that a lot of people who were playing Yummy were going to want to copy Triff and do the same thing, Mitsurugi Yummy, and played no hand traps. So a lot of players started to do the meta call, like Kamal with the Crystron Canine main decking the Mjolnir, and the player who played Ryzeal Automat, where they took advantage of the fact that they were not going to get interrupted by hand traps by playing cards that would just auto win them the game, aka Mjolnir or the Ouroboros loop. So, and that's what really did Triff in at YCS Anaheim, was the Ryzeal Automat deck, ripping him for 2 cards out of his hand with the Ouroboros loop, summoning Protoss, and then also being able to place an Omni Negate with one of the Automat traps. Like, it was just a recipe for disaster, and unfortunately Triff kind of got the front end of it. That being said, though, I do think this is still a competent and good deck, especially because they can just play Protoss. So if they just go uninterrupted, they're going to rip you for 2 cards out of your hand, they're going to Protoss lock you, and they're just going to kind of win the game. And I do think it does take a good pilot. I don't think, again, just anybody can pick up this deck and win with it. I think it is better than the rogue category, but I don't think it's a top contender by any means. I think this is a deck that, if there's a good pilot behind it, it's going to do good. Speaking of copying pro player deck lists, Fire King Drac, I'm going to put this in the rogue category. I do think that this is not the most fantastic deck in the format. One, because Fire King loses to Droll Lockbird, something that has made its way quickly back into the format, but the new Drac cards, like if you are playing Dinkabui's list, which is the whole reason we're talking about this, Dinkabui topped YCS Lil or Lima, I don't remember which one that weekend, but he did top 32 with this deck. And he was playing more than just like the Drac Aolo and the Astero and the Meteor. He was playing Fossil Dig, he was playing the Archosaur, he was playing Overraptor in the side deck, he was even playing Miscellaneousaurus. That build and that version of this deck loses even harder to Droll than Fire King already did. So because of that, I don't know if I can highly recommend this deck. I do think, like, if you're Dinkabui, like a good pilot who knows the deck, you're going to perform well and you're going to perform great. But I do think that because just how the format has started to shape, thanks to Mitsurugi and like Triff's success with Yummy Mitsurugi, and just overall, again, where the format is going, I do think that this is more of a rogue contending strategy and will struggle to see major success. That being said, though, this deck is actually seeing some pretty good success over in the Genesis format. So if at any point you are not seeing success here in the advanced format with the Fire King Drac, and this is a deck you do want to play, consider checking it out over in the Genesis format. You do have to cut cards like Fossil Dig and Miscellaneousaurus, but this is still a very viable deck over in Genesis. Sky Striker, I'm putting this in good pilot as well. This is a good deck, and it is a deck that I think does need to be respected. I don't think this is a deck that you can just ignore, because if you do, then it's going to catch you off guard and it's going to kick your ass and take your lunch money. But if you are in fact respecting it, then I see no reason why you should be losing to this deck. I mean, Drone Lockbird once again is back in the format as a mainstay in most people's main decks, and that is the card that really takes this deck out back behind the Denny's. Pure Branded, again, I think like more of a rogue strategy. Branded is just Branded, and they did get some new cards in the new structure deck. One of which is actually a really good spell card. But I do think that if you're going to be playing Branded or Draco Tail, you might as well just play both of the decks. Realistically, at this point, both decks are kind of just the same deck, because if you're playing Branded, you're probably playing several Draco Tail cards. If you're playing Draco Tail, then you're definitely playing Cartesia. So again, I think these decks are just kind of one. But if you're trying to play the pure versions, again, I think you should just be playing the hybrid at this point. Gem Knight, I'm putting it at the top of like good pilot. This is a strong deck. I mean, we saw Stevie top with it at YCS Anaheim, and this was his first event back in a very, very long time, and he got top 32 with Gem Knight. Like, this is a legit deck, and like I mentioned with Sky Striker, if you're not respecting this deck, it will punish you. It is a very good going second strategy that's not bullshit like Tempai was, but it is also playing, you know, Dark Ruler No More, Raigeki, Lightning Storm. It's playing all these breakers just so it can then kill you after it wipes your board. And so it is just a very good deck, and if you're not respecting it, it's gonna get you. Lunalight, I think, is a top contender. I think this is a very good deck. This is one of those decks that, again, if you're not respecting it when you go to an event, it's gonna get you. And it's kind of a vicious cycle, because the moment people start respecting this deck, it's dog ass and it's not going to perform. But then people start being like, well, it's not performing, so I'm not going to respect it. And that's when it shows back up again. Liger Dancer is just a really annoying card. It's really hard to out with like most decks in the current format. If they can get to that, it almost secures the victory for them. But it is a really easy deck to counter. Also, not to mention with Lancey out of the format, this deck does see a little more success. But this deck sees its most success when people are not respecting it. And we saw that at, you know, Worlds, where people were not respecting it, and so it was a big meta call to take it to Worlds. And we even saw at YCS Lille that it was seeing a good amount of success. It didn't really top, I don't think, in terms of top 8, but it definitely was taking over the entire day one. So this is still a very good deck, and it will catch people off guard, and it will, you know, punish people who do not respect it. And it will probably win or even top events here and there because people are not respecting it. Crystron Canine, this is a good deck. I think Inclusion going to 1 was not nearly as effective as everyone was over dramatic about. It does hurt, don't get me wrong, but it's not a huge deal. This deck is still doing crazy stuff, you know, the Mjolnir lock, it's ending on stuff like Infinity, it ends on Clockwork Knight, the spell, which then just kind of wins the game against Yummy unless they're playing Mitsurugi to try and play around it. The deck is still very much able to perform. It's still very consistent. Joe Cool, Summon himself, and Solfador is just like the most broken thing in the world. That being said, though, if you do play against a Crystron Canine player, then you might want to save your hand traps for the Mjolnir. If you got to prevent the Mjolnir from hitting the board, or you are just going to lose. Water, I'm going to put this in Rogue. Water is still water. Water is doing things that water has always done. They're ripping cards out of your hand. They're looking at your hand. They're locking you with the water statue. Water is still a fine deck. I actually just saw that it once again topped, or I think even won a regional recently. It's still a good deck. It just requires a good pilot, someone who knows how to play it, but also knows how to navigate it in combination with the current format. You can't just take Water that's been playing the same cards since Malice and Ryzeo format to, you know, the same regional now and, you know, see success. We do have to see this deck adapt a little bit. And because of that, again, I think it is just like a rogue strategy. We are seeing less representation because Drone Lockbird, again, is in the format, and Malice being in the format with Shifter in the main, like sometimes that just kind of gatekeeps them out. But overall, I mean, the deck is still just kind of fine. Memento, I'm kind of putting in the middle. I don't think it's a rogue, but also like it does require a good pilot. I don't know what more to say about Memento. I say the same thing every video. It's just like a fine deck. This is a deck that everybody forgets about, and that's when it shines. That's when it catches people off guard. Memento's doing actually a lot of good stuff in Genesis format. But again, like I say every video, this is a deck that when it's catching people off guard, it's doing good stuff. Vanquished Soul Canine, I'm putting it in bottom tables, not because I truly believe that it's that bad of a deck, mainly just because we're not seeing it anymore. Like, putting Rosin to 1 and putting Stake Your Soul to 1, that was enough to get people to just stop playing the deck. I think it is still just a fine deck. You know, just replace the Rosins with like Impulse and Fire Attacker and just kind of, you know, hope you see the cards. Like Vanquish Soul Canine was already like a vaguely inconsistent deck because they, you know, sometimes open just really bad hands, but I don't know. I think this is still just a fine deck. I'm putting it at bottom table strictly just because we just don't see people playing it anymore. DDD, I'm putting it actually, funny enough, in like the good Pilot Rogue. I think this is a fine deck. I really do. I do think that if we saw more representation with DDD, that this deck would actually be better than people are giving it credit for. I think this is a good deck. However, that being said, DDD is one of the first decks that pumped out a spreadsheet, and rightfully so. This deck has 1,000 different lines to take, and they all feel the right way to go. So this does require a good pilot to be able to navigate the deck, but also navigate the board with the deck. And so that's probably the main reason it doesn't have a lot of representation, is it's kind of a hard deck. Radiant Typhoon, I'm putting in bottom tables because it's just not doing much. And I don't know if it's because people just haven't found the right build for it yet, or people just aren't really toying with the deck. That being said, it's doing a lot of good stuff over in Genesis format. This is one of the best decks in Genesis format right now, simply because since it's so new, it has no points currently tied to it, but it is one of the best decks in the format. Radiant Typhoon Runic is like the, if not one of the best decks in Genesis format. So if you are really gung-ho about playing this deck and you're not seeing success in advanced format, then definitely check out Genesis format. I think that this is the perfect deck to play in Genesis format, at least right now, until, you know, it eventually gets points. Tri Brigade, I said this last video and I forgot to actually take this out the list, but I didn't mean to really mention it, but Tri Brigade, it's better as an engine. Its new cards are good, but not good enough to really put it over the edge, especially to keep up with decks like Yummy and Mitsurugi. Like, it's just not enough. It's a fine deck. It's good, but it's better as like an engine or like a side part of the deck, but right now it just doesn't have a home in the current format. And Sulfur Cord, I'm going to put it in bottom tables because I think this deck as an engine or part of another deck like say Yummy is really good. I think Sulfur Cord variants of other decks will be very good, but I do think Sulfur Cord as a deck on its own is just like not enough. And that is going to be it for today's meta tier list. Again, sorry that I spoke so softly and quietly in this video. I'm just trying not to wake up my fiance. But I am curious to hear what you all think. The meta has vastly changed since I last talked about it in my last meta tier list video, which is the only reason I made another meta tier list in the same meta. But definitely let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts, and of course let me know you know things you agreed with, things you didn't agree with. Let's have a civil conversation, not an argument. And of course, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. But with that, I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.